Time to get ripped. Fat loss can get hard sometimes, but if you follow the right steps, you can lose fat in no time, I guarantee you. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you 7 tips to lose fat. Tip number 1, create a caloric deficit. Now, if you want to lose fat, you want to make sure that you're satisfying one very important equation, and that is calories in is less than calories out. What this means is that you're eating less and you're doing more. So you're burning more calories than the ones you're taking. So when you create this negative energy balance, you start to lose fat. And a great way to create a caloric deficit is to first find out your daily caloric requirements and then reduce it by 10%. So let's say you're a guy who weighs 200 pounds and you regularly work out. Your estimated calories will be around 3,000. So when we reduce it by 10%, it is now 2,700. So that will be the total amount of calories you'll take in order to lose fat. If you're not sure about your daily caloric requirements, do a quick search on Google and you'll find a couple of online calculators that will help you decide what your caloric intake is depending on your weight and your activity level. One more thing you need to know about your caloric deficit is that you want to continually bring down your calories. So again, if you're that guy whose calories were 2,700 calories, after a few weeks you want to bring it down to 2,500 calories in order to see progress. Just don't go crazy with the math. There's no magic number of reducing calories. Just try to gradually lower your calories over the course of few weeks. Tip number 2 is get a good nutrition plan. Now there's a lot of diets that are trending these days. You know, there's things like keto, paleo, or banana diet or some other But the truth is that a good nutrition plan covers all the basic macronutrients and in the right proportion, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But right now we're going to talk about all the 3 macronutrients, carbs, fats, and protein, and why they're important for fat loss. Starting off with carbs. Now carbs are one of the most misunderstood macronutrients out there. You literally find thousands and thousands of videos and articles by these experts claiming that carbs are bad. When you eat carbs you get fat, and they'll come up with all sort of theories. But the reality is that carbs are and always will be a very important part of a proper nutrition plan, because not only carbs are your main source of fuel, they also help in muscle gain, muscle recovery, and various other benefits. But as far as fat loss is concerned, carbs are lower in calories and they provide a lot of energy. Let me rephrase that. The good carbs are lower in calories and provide a lot of energy. What are these good carbs? They are high in fiber, low in GI index, and they don't have any added sugar. Here's a list. You've got things like oatmeal, wheat, brown rice, brown bread, fruits, and vegetables. Things like that. These are the carbs that I want you to include in your diet, and they are very, very important. The second up is proteins, our favorite macronutrient, especially for bodybuilders, because after all, protein is the one that helps us build muscle mass. But what most people don't know is that protein also helps in fat loss because of 2 very important reasons. Number 1 is that protein has a very high thermic effect. What that means is that you burn a lot more calories digesting protein as compared to fats and carbs. And the second reason why protein is very important for fat loss is because protein helps us maintain our muscle protein synthesis. You see, when you're on a caloric deficit for a very long time, your muscle protein synthesis levels start to go down. And when they go down, you start to lose muscle mass, which we do not want. So taking an adequate amount of protein makes sure that your muscle protein synthesis stays up and you don't lose muscle mass. Good sources of protein include turkey, chicken, meat, and all sorts of dairy. Then let's talk about the third macronutrients, fats. Now, there are 2 different types of people who have different opinions on fats. There's this one category who loves to eat fat, and then there's this another category that hates fat. Now, my take on this is that fats are an important part of a good diet, but there's really no reason to go high fat, because although fats have undeniable benefits, for example, fats facilitate the absorption of fat soluble vitamins, and the right kinds of fats can actually help lower your cholesterol levels. There's no denying that fats do provide good value, But the problem with high-fat diets is that they don't consider that fats are very high in calories. 1 gram of fat contains 9 calories, whereas 1 gram of carb and protein contain only 4 calories. So eating a lot of fat makes it really hard for you to lose fat simply because they contain a lot of calories. Good sources of fat include eggs, fatty fish, nuts and seeds, full-fat dairy, coconut oil, and extra virgin olive oil. Okay, so now that you know the importance of carbs, fat, and protein, now let's talk about the macro ratio. Now the macro ratio, without getting too scientific, I'm just going to give it to you, is going to be 40, 40, and 20. What does that mean? That means that 40% of your calories are going to come from carbs, 40% are going to come from protein, and only 20% are going to come from fats. The reason why carbs and protein are kept high is because they are more important for us, and the reason fats are kept low is because, just like I told you, fats are very high in calories. Tip number 3, cycle your calories. Now this is where fat loss gets a little bit more complicated. You see, as we talked about in tip number 1, you want to make sure that you're creating a caloric deficit. But the problem with this is that when you're on a caloric deficit for a very long time, your body starts to think that you're starving to death. And as a result, your body lowers caloric expenditure. And that is a problem for us because, as I talked about earlier, that was the equation. Calories in should be less than calories out. When your calories out are getting lower, it gets really hard for you to create that negative energy balance, which is very important for fat loss. So this is a problem for us. And here is where calorie cycling comes into play. Calorie cycling is very simple, very straightforward. All you need to do is you need to add 1 refeed day every week. What does that mean? It means that if you're on a fat loss diet and you're taking in around, let's say, 2,700 calories a day, in a refeed day, what you'll do is you'll increase your calories to 3,000. So for example, from Monday to Saturday, you're eating 2,700 calories. On Sunday, you will eat 3,000 calories. This refeed day will sort of trick your body into believing that you're not actually starving. So this whole calorie cycling process makes sure that you never hit a fat loss plateau. Tip number 4, lift weights. Now, I know a lot of you are big fans of cardio. There's, all sorts of different cardios out there. There's steady state. There's even high intensity interval training or HIIT cardio, which people are really fond of. All of that is good, but lifting weights is better. You see, lifting weights burns a ton of calories simply because you're really breaking down the muscles every time you exercise, and the entire muscle building process requires a lot of calories. So you're really increasing your calorie output, which makes it very easy to lose fat simply because of the fact that you're now satisfying that equation, calories in less than calories out. Lifting weights, make sure that your calorie out goes up. Tip number 5 is do compound movements. Now that you're on board with lifting weights, let's talk about your workouts. You want to make sure that all your workout revolve around big compound movements, things like squats, the bench press, bent over rows, things like that. These movements recruit a lot of muscle fibers, and when you recruit more muscle fibers, you do more damage to them, and the more damage you do to these muscles, the greater calories you'll burn. Tip number 6, drink more water. It'll just keep you more full. Our 7th and final tip is sleep. Several studies have been done on this, which tell us that inadequate sleep leads to fat gain. It is because lack of sleep really messes up your hormones. Hormones like ghrelin or leptin, they just all get messed up, which makes fat loss unnecessarily hard. So do yourself a favor and just sleep for at least 6 to 8 hours a day if fat loss is your goal. Alright guys, there you have it. These were my 7 fat loss tips. Let's have a little recap. Number 1, you want to make sure that you're in a caloric deficit, which means that you're doing more and you're eating less. Number 2, you want to make sure that you're eating the right kinds of food with the right macro ratio, which was 40, 40, 20. 40% carbs, 40% protein, and 20% fat. Number 3 was calorie cycling. Add a refeed day once a week so that you don't hit a fat loss plateau and you continue to lose fat. Number 4 was start working out. Number 5 was to do heavy compound movements that recruit more muscle groups, shoulder press, bench press, squats, deadlifts, bent over rows, things like that. All of that is good. Number 6, drink more water, and number 7 was sleep. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I'll be happy to respond. This is Mohammed West, fitnesssapings.com.